What is up with everyone? Paul from Untitled Productions here, and today we're going to be reviewing Resident Evil Village. We'll be breaking this review down into sections. Overall, this game to me has been an amazing experience, not only for the series, but for our channel as well, as we've grown substantially since I began covering this game. So, let's begin with the main point of the game. Of course, it's going to be the gameplay. Now, the gameplay for Resident Evil Village differs drastically from its predecessor, Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, and was more slow-paced and survival-oriented than Resident Evil Village. This one focuses heavily on its combat and weaponry. Gearing up with different kinds of weapons sold from the Duke, Ethan is more get up to fight the Lycans and big giant monsters this time around. After the Baker incident, Ethan trained in military interactions. Now there's even a push function for pushing away enemies when they get too close, and you can also guard to help keep them away, like you could do back in Resident Evil 7. Aiming is more improved as well as weapon recoil. Upgrades for your guns can help even more as well. Each gun has upgrades to help improve recoil, ammo capacity, and more damage, same as past Resident Evil games, so you can find weapons scattered throughout the village. Unfortunately, the grunt enemies such as the Lycans and the Moricas are bullet sponges most of the time, requiring headshots to take them down a lot faster. Unfortunately, they also have the same exact attack patterns as the molded did back in Resident Evil 7, but that is only small features that don't really get in the way of the gameplay too much, but it does add and leaves some questions on if they just reuse those for this game. Anyways, moving on to our next section is the story. Now, the story is mostly where this game shines the most in my opinion. The story, as most know, is a father trying to get his daughter back. After the events of Resident Evil 7, Ethan and Mia were under the protection of Chris Redfield and the BSAA. Over the months and years after Mia and Ethan were moved to various safe houses, and the whole thing was covered up as a gas leak within Louisiana. Finally, the couple settled down in Europe within the mountains. Mia got pregnant with little Rosemary and had her. During a trip to the market, Mia was abducted and held captive by Mother Miranda, the leader of the four houses and a devout village with the help of her Cadau. Miranda then disguised herself as Mia, living within the house right under Ethan's nose. In an attempt to steal Rosemary right from under him, Chris Redfield and the Hound Wolf squad showed up, blasting her and taking Ethan and Rosemary. This began Ethan's adventure into the village and towards rescuing little Rosemary from the deranged Mother Miranda and her four children, aka the four lords of the village, Dimitrescu, Benvenuto, Moreau, and Heisenberg. Fighting and killing each of the four lords of the village, Ethan finally came face to face with Mother Miranda after killing the final Lord Heisenberg. After she ripped his heart from his chest, Ethan was encountered by Evelyn through the Megamycete. Evelyn reveals to Ethan that he's been dead since the Baker house and that Jack is the one that killed him at the very beginning of the game. With this information, Ethan continued on, killing Miranda, saving Rosemary, and blowing up the Megamycete and the village altogether. Ethan, being infected with the molded as well as Mia, brings Rosemary as the ultimate being created by the molded, which is where they're heading either with the DLC or with the next Resident Evil installment. As we all know, the ending of the game does say that the father story is done, and we do see Rosemary older and almost like she's a part of of the BSAA or whatever Chris is coming up with after the events of Resident Evil Village. As we know, the BSAA at the end of Resident Evil Village was using bioweapons and sending them into the village to actually do the work. And Chris is hesitant and isn't really relying too much on the BSAA anymore as he once did, of course. He doesn't trust them, and he is on his way to their actual HQ in Europe to talk about this bioweapons shenanigans that they're doing, as we all know from the end. So hopefully we either see that in a DLC or somewhere in like a video that they'll put out or something like that. They'll go into what happens once Chris gets there and confronts them about it. The story is very reminiscent of Resident Evil 4 and its storyline, of course, with Leon being sent to a village in the middle of nowhere to save Ashley, as well as Ethan accidentally stumbling into this village and trying to save his daughter Rosemary. Very reminiscent of it. Of course, you do have the big baddies, and you do have, of course, a religion and a cult almost in both games. As we know, Mother Miranda basically runs a cult. Her whole devout village is very religious upon the fact that she can bring people back with her Kadao and the molded, etc., as we all know. Anyways, moving on to our next section, it will be the characters and enemies of Resident Evil Village. From the tall Step on Me Lady Dimitrescu to Mr. Electric Man Heisenberg, these are the enemies of Resident Evil Village. First up is Salvatore Moreau, the fishman of the Southern Reservoir. For me, he was the most unfleshed out of the four lords, rather just a disgrace in itself. He was always feeling sorry for himself within the game, and you could tell he was the wasted of the four by Mother Miranda. The only interesting aspect from him was the giant fish run and the introduction of the Veracolac, which is the big werewolf almost type enemy that takes a hell of a lot of bullets to put down. My first playthrough, I didn't even know you can kill him because I read the note and it was like, hey, guns are not doing anything to this guy, so I thought you couldn't even kill him with regular weapons. Anyways, next up is Miss Donna and Angie Benevenito, the horrific dollhouse to the north of the village. Donna was where the tense and horror aspect of the game came to fruition, with Angie taking all your gear and you having to solve puzzles in order to escape from the basement really drove my love for this game 10 times higher than it already was. She wasn't fleshed out more than Moreau at all, but it helped bring the atmosphere more than Moreau's area had, especially with the giant baby fetus monster chasing you around the basement. Third for our list of the lords stands at 9 feet tall, Miss Lady Dimitrescu and her 3 daughters, Bella, Daniela, and Cassandra. The 3 daughters, as unsettling as they were, I feel they didn't get as much gameplay and screen time as I had originally thought they would. Killing the first daughter very fast after entering the castle, and then the next 2 soon after, they were killed too fast and not as fleshed out as I wanted them to be, except within some notes found around the castle. As we all know, throughout the notes as well, you do learn that they actually aren't beings, they're more of just giant flies that kind of make up what they look like, and that's why they love blood and go for blood. Lady Alcina Dimitrescu was more fleshed out personality-wise, as well as within notes found around the castle and other areas of the village and dialogue. As we know through notes as well, Dimitrescu is blood-oriented because of the fact that she has some kind of blood disease that was hereditary through her family, and when she got transformed into the molded by Mother Miranda, it gave her like a lust and a taste for blood, and she needs blood in order to stay alive and survive. As we know through her boss fight, when she says more blood and she crashes into the tower, almost dying because of the fact that she doesn't have enough blood within her system. The castle being women only as the servants and the enemies you face walking around it. The Moricas and the Samkas guarding the castle and top buildings in the skyline. They're easy to defeat, but bullet sponges for certain weapons using the same attack patterns as the molded in Resident Evil 7, as we talked about earlier. Finally, Mr. Heisenberg himself, the more fleshed out of the 4 lords, and the one where you spend the latter half of the game at. He's building an army for the purpose of a rebellion against Mother Miranda. The soldats and haulers he's creating are to help him take down Mother Miranda and take Rose for her power. Trying to enlist Ethan's help with this task, Ethan declines, seeing more of the army than he'd like to. Heisenberg is more fleshed out because he has a bigger purpose and plan within the story than the other 3 lords had, especially from hearing his voice throughout the game as you continue through. Taking him down even results in you coming face to face with Mother Miranda herself. The soldats were a tough enemy type to face, and with a bigger variety than the other enemy types faced throughout the game and village. Of course, you do have certain attack patterns with the soldats, such as the only way to actually kill them is either by shooting them in the head for certain soldats, or shooting them in these heart-like generators that you just have to shoot at. The Panzers were a little bit harder because you always had to use explosives to take off their armor before you can even hurt them or attack them in any way. The village being a main part of the game and basically the hub for Ethan to regain composure and new weapons and gear. The Lycans faced within the village are intense enemies and hard to take down, especially when you get surrounded. The larger Lycans are equipped with spikes on their hands and bow Lycans with their bow and arrows ready to shoot. Urias, the bigger Lycan leader, wields a giant sledgehammer and calls upon his smaller brothers for help at certain times in the game. The Duke, a merchant-type character, aiding and helping Ethan within his adventure, getting his daughter back. He sells weapons and sometimes offers advice to Ethan about the village and its lords. Being a giant molded himself, he understands Ethan more than most of the characters in the game. And because of the fact that he was also turned just like everyone else, but the Duke kind of has his own, what is the word I'm looking for? His own, advancements, his own intentions with it. As you know, he's helping Ethan because he doesn't exactly 100% agree with Mother Miranda, and he actually tried to tell the village about the outside world, as you guys will read inside notes within the village. Last but not least, Mother Miranda. The big reason all of this is happening and the one who stole Rosemary from Ethan and the Hound Wolf squad. Having been the teacher to the one and only Oswell E. Spencer, the big man behind the Umbrella Corporation and the real reason behind bioweapons. She spent more than a century trying to bring her daughter back from death using the mold and the megamycete underneath the village. She looks to use Rose as the manifestation and a vessel for her daughter Ava, using the Cadao to turn the villagers into an army of Lycans and using it on the four lords to see if they were good candidates for vessels of Little Eva. She's the most fleshed out and understandable of the bigger enemies of the game, only because you hear more about Mother Miranda than you hear about anyone else, and because she is 100% the reason, especially when you get to our lab at the very end of Chris's section of the game. You read through notes and you see she's actually the one that created Evelyn for Resident Evil 7, and Mia knew her way before, and she never told Ethan about it. And that's where the boat comes from. It comes from over there, trying to bring it down to Brazil, and that's when they end up crashing inside of Louisiana, therefore killing Ethan in the process when he gets to the Baker residence. And of course, the whole big reason behind everything in the Resident Evil universe, being the teacher of Oswell E. Spencer, basically showing him what he can do, then him finding the plant in Africa and getting the progenitor virus, building his mansion in the Arklay Mountains, then using the T-virus to create zombies and bioweapons, it getting out, Resident Evil 2 happening, Raccoon City getting destroyed, Umbrella, stocks prices crashing, Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 5, she is the big reason behind everything. This game ties her into every single thing that happened. Wesker being made because they put so many viruses into him as a kid when they made the Wesker program. It's so much stuff that comes from all of this that is just insane to even think about when you really look at it. I will be doing a video talking about everything she's influenced and everything that she basically brought upon the world of Resident Evil at this point. So, now for the verdict and rating of Resident Evil Village and how it stands within the rest of the Resident Evil games. For me, this game took my number 2 spot right underneath Resident Evil 4. Of course, Resident Evil 4, nothing could ever take that spot. I hate to say it, but Resident Evil 4 will forever be my favorite game of all time and will forever be my favorite Resident Evil game no matter what. I've played that game so many times on so many consoles for so many years that it's not even funny. It's a perfect blend of action and survival and helps to keep you on your toes throughout the whole game. Is it perfect? Definitely not. But is it a good game overall and help to serve the purpose that it presents? Of course, absolutely yes. After all, we talked about and a little bit of fleshing out some of its bigger baddies, the final score I'd give the game is an 8 overall. It's a good Resident Evil game. It's a good game and feels and plays amazingly on both older and the newer consoles, but it differs drastically from the horror-stricken Resident Evil 7 and helps to blend it all together into a perfect installment in the series. So I have to give it an 8 out of 10. It does have my number 2 spot though in Resident Evil games, but it doesn't blend what Resident Evil 2 blended with it, with the survival and the action, as much as that game did. Resident Evil 3, same way, but it does help to make it a great game, and I think it is a great next installment of the Resident Evil series. So, with all of that being said, thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe for more content, and with all of that, we'll see you guys in the next Resident Evil video, and thank you guys for watching all of these videos. Goodbye, and remember to be timeless.